It's good to see everyone. We welcome our. Or maybe it's there. So this morning, we're gonna, it's our reunion. We're gonna talk about the trip that we took to Israel just recently. We're so excited to see everyone here. And if I can just give you a few more announcements now, in case you sneak out, because it's always good to have announcements. So first of all, you had our beautiful lox and bagels, but if you want to eat all day at Macomb Solel Lakeside, come back this afternoon at 3. We have food trucks coming. So it's going to be a really fun afternoon block party. Then we continue in the week. For those from Bethan, you can go into our sanctuary and unbeknownst to Rabbi, I'm going to ask him to count the Omer today because we count the Omer with cereal boxes. And we have a large display. Why? Because Shavuot will be here. On the first day, which is the second day of Pesach, we put up 1 box, then 2 boxes, 3 boxes, and we're up to how many boxes, Rabbi?
45.
45 days. So that's 45 boxes. I meant altogether, but okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
1,000.
about 1,000. Thank you. Anyway, right. So
go about 50 a day.
yeah, if it so moves you, we need a few more boxes because now we have the big days until 49, which is on Thursday night. Why do I know that? That's Erev Shavuot. We are participating with the community at Am Shalom, and it's going to be a fun night. They have different musicians coming in. You need to register. It's all in your Macomb at home. And then Friday, of course, is Yisker, 10:30 start time. And then the cycle begins all over again. So welcome, everybody. And with no further ado, Rabbi Serrata.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to all of you, and especially to those who came with on our trip. I'm not going to do a lot of the talking today. It's really up to folks who are on the trip to talk about it. I gathered some photos of my own and from the different participants. So some of you should recognize some of the stuff you sent. Thank you very much for sending it. I tried to credit everybody but there were a couple that I pulled off our WhatsApp stuff, so I'm not quite sure whose those were occasionally. So, so if I get an attribution wrong here or there, you can let me know afterwards and I can fix it. But meantime, we arrived in Tel Aviv and had our first dinner together. I think actually this is the first thing I misattributed is, doesn't want to do it that way. Let's do it there. So I think on retrospect, after I put this picture in, I realized this is not our welcome dinner in Tel Aviv. This is actually our Shabbat dinner in Jerusalem, right? Yeah. So, but it gives a sense of the picture. You know, that was just the salad side of the table. So, right. Is there someone from the group who wants to start with a kind of a general, feeling of the trip or anything? Any memories from that moment when we gathered for the first dinner? Yeah.
Wait.
Gotta have to.
Computer in front of you.
Yeah.
And when you hold the microphone, it should be very close to your mouth.
Sorry, we're gonna have to do that all the way through because we have a lot of people at home. And so they'll only hear if you're speaking through the computer. So
Since you have a food
get
slide,
close to the computer.
I'll make a comment on the
Okay.
food. One thing that I didn't expect was this trip was life-changing to me in my eating appreciation of food and cooking when I got home, because look at all the vegetables on there. And the vegetables were amazing. Just the freshest vegetables prepared very simply, not skimping on the olive oil, making a beautiful sauce out of tahini and lemon and garlic that lightly dresses a lot of the vegetables. We had these amazing buffets with just filled maybe half of it with vegetables. And the other thing was fresh cheeses. They make some very simple fresh cheeses there that are very delicious. One is labne, which is like made from Greek yogurt and then put in a cheesecloth and get some more liquid out. And it's very creamy, creamier than cream cheese. It's on all the buffets. They dress it with olive oil. And I got a new spice, za'atar. Za'atar is from herb hyssop, which grows around Jerusalem. They say after a rain, you can smell it around Jerusalem. The Arabs use a lot of it, and the Israelis have it also adopted it in their cooking. So I would say if you're trying to eat the Mediterranean diet, this is a Mediterranean diet with a Middle Eastern spin to it. And it's a really healthy diet, and I'm trying to cook more like that at home. So anyway, that's my comment about the food.
Thanks, Sarah. Let's go on to our first day. Oh,
Hi, everybody.
And if you're short, yeah.
Yeah.
Bring it there.
There we go. Hi, so I'm Judith Golden, and I just wanted to make one more comment about our welcome dinner, because that was where we first came together. And when you're traveling with a group, you never know how it's gonna gel. And I knew a lot of people, but I knew about half the people actually that we were traveling with. And there were some people from Beth Am, and there were some people from Macomb Sola Lakeside that I didn't really know well. Maybe I knew their face, maybe I didn't. And our guide went around and made sure he knew everybody's name by the end of the night. He had this little way of doing it. And through that, we all learned each other's names as well. And I just want to say how grateful I am for all of the fellow travelers. We got along so well. It was such an amazing group of people. It was such a joy to travel with every single one of you. And that was all started with that welcome dinner.
Thank you, Judith. And for me, that's the moment where Cantor J got the loaner guitar with no strap, but we were still able to sing Psalm 118. This is the day that God has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And so you can see kind of the view from where we were staying of the Mediterranean Sea in Tel Aviv. And I skipped right past the first thing we went to. So, and Shelley, thank you for the pictures. This was the Ayalon Institute. Someone have a memory from Ayalon? You guys remember we went to Ayalon?
Bullet factory.
Right? So the, yeah, Mary? You got it? Sorry.
Explain what it is a little bit, and then I'll.
Yes, so this is a historical place that goes back to the time of the British Mandate. On the ground above, it seemed to be a normal kibbutz functioning, actually a training kibbutz, so training new people to go out to other kibbutzim around the country. But underground, it actually even functioned as a laundry where the British soldiers during the British Mandate would bring their uniforms and their laundry to be done. And underneath the laundry, the noise was covering the sound of making bullets in the basement that would end up being used in the fight for independence in 1948. How's that? Now come up. So what you're looking at here is when you slide one of the big laundry machines aside, there's a staircase down to the bullet factory below. You can in front of me.
I think that the amazing thing is this went on for 4 years. And the people there, okay, so husbands, wives, whatever. If the wife worked underground or the husband, no one knew it. They never told anybody. It was in their ingenuity. They put a bakery to cover the smell of, you know, the ammunition being blown up. It was an amazing ingenuity. And it realizes how people can work together to save themselves and to face real vulnerability, because the British are sitting on the edge was with the barracks for the for the British, and they didn't know it. And people within the kibbutz didn't know who was working on, they didn't know it was there either. Only the people had to know. And it lasted for about 4 years. And to me, that tells you exactly why Israel is today sitting there as a war. It is a war democracy. There's always that tension, but their commitment to the cause, to working with each other and surviving, I felt was just amazing.
Great, thank you. And so this is our first day of touring, so it was a long day. So the next thing we did was a place called Leket, and I'm pretty sure someone wants to say something about Leket. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you gotta come up here.
Good morning. I'm Judy Friedman, and this was actually one of my highlights because I'm a big nature person. Before I get to that though, since I haven't said anything, I just want to say that I agree, everybody's I think it feels the same way, but we had a guide named Uri, and he was just consummate. And I just want to kind of set the context for those of you who weren't with us, because Uri actually on our Shabbat, or our first gathering night, he kind of set the context for our whole trip by talking about the history and the past and the present and the future, and where are we going and where have we been, and a lot of what the trip was designed around this idea of connecting the dots for Judaism. And he talked a lot about where we were and the fights, multiple fights that we had to do to just keep our independence and keep our lifestyles, and even throughout history, centuries ago. And so every stop we made, for whatever reason, that he did an amazing job of connecting those dots for me personally. And so, this was actually the agricultural farm that gathers and harvests vegetables for local. It's kind of like like a food pantry. Thank you. And I think we gathered enough to feed 100 families. And the cool thing was that this is actually kohlrabi, which I had never seen before. And we've tried it, and certainly you don't see it in the ground, and they got all of us in the dirt. And I think that was really a bonding moment for many of us, because we were singing. And one of the moments that we were trying to come up with was with the rabbi's wife. We were trying to come up with songs about kohlrabi, and somehow there's not a song about kohlrabi. So oh yeah, okay, well I guess that's a challenge for Cantor J to come up with something that goes with kohlrabi. So so it was just a group effort, and great to be able to give back at the same time.
Great, thank you very much. And that's Uri in the foreground on this picture of this group shot. So yeah, Mike, do you want to come up? Yeah. So Uri took a lot of selfies, of himself in front of us, in front of something. So
this part of it was our first real, first day, but it really is special for me. I work for a food manufacturer who says our tagline is blending care and creativity to nourish the world. So here we are in Israel, thousands of miles away, nourishing the world. But when I did a internal social media post, I did some research into Leket. So there are several laws around Leket. It's Jewish laws that basically allow for feeding people in need without them begging and feeling, what's the word I want to use?
demeaned.
Yes, demeaned or whatever. So this is a perfect example. Farmers give part of their field over. So that's one of the Leket laws, is to leave a corner of your field for people less fortunate to farm. Also, another one of those laws is, if farmer's going to market, something falls off out of his truck or whatever, don't pick it up. Leave it for people that are less fortunate. So anyhow, I just thought it was really pretty cool. I also heard from people in my company that asked to get more information and contacts at Luckett, because we don't really do a lot of business in Israel, but we do some. So I just wanted to add
Great.
that.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so in addition to farming, the corners of the fields and things like that, they also collect the unused food from hotels and things like that and distribute that as well. So I think they told us they serve 100,000 people. Does anyone remember that? I think they said 100,000 people a week, something like that, are being fed by Luckett. Molly? See you. Everybody welcome Molly, who's here from Congregation Beth Am today. Okay. Yeah.
I'm Molly. Of all the wonderful things that we did in Israel, this kohlrabi experience is my favorite, most heartwarming experience. And the reason for that is we were able to work together as a team. In a little bit under an hour, we picked 800 pounds of kohlrabi. And I had, a little bit trouble pulling off the leaves and the roots and stuff. But Yuri and I tag teamed it. I would pull off what I could pull off, and then I'd throw it to him and he'd pull off the rest of it. So this is the power of community and working together and the miracles that we can do. And it was just such a beautiful lesson for me.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you again in person. And then we took a graffiti tour of a neighborhood called Florentine. I've got a couple of pictures of this. Anyone have any specific memories of Florentine that you mentioned? It's a neighborhood that has been pretty downtrodden in Tel Aviv for a while and is making a dramatic comeback. So being gentrified. This is one of the pieces of graffiti. We saw this one's from a stencil, and the Hebrew is love your neighbor as you love yourself. But if you can see in the picture, it's two Orthodox Jewish men, right, in an embrace. So it's a call to love your neighbor and also a little bit of a political statement. Yeah. Other thoughts about the graffiti tour? I feel like I'm reminding you guys now of things that you did. So this is actually a synagogue in Florentine with graffiti on the side of it, right? So one of those things, if you can't beat them, join them kind of things. So they allowed people to put graffiti on the side of their building there. So yeah, Sarah. In fact, maybe we'll save time, if I don't have to call you and then you walk up. If you have something to say, just start walking up. Okay. That'll save us.
It's interesting that they considered the graffiti art and they didn't paint over it. Sometimes graffiti was painted over and then another artist would put something up, but there was a certain reverence that this was actually art. And I think in the US, when people spray paint the trains and stuff, it's always painted over and cleaned up. So I thought that was quite unusual that they had a reverence for the graffiti as a political message and as a artistic expression there.
Thank you very much. And as you can see, I spelled Leanne Fitzgerald right, but I had some trouble with. And then we walked on an area called the Independence Trail. We made a few stops along here. This building is actually sort of torn down practically to its studs. That's Independence Hall. So it's obviously closed right now, but they're in the process of renovating it. So, but we were able to go from stop to stop and talk a little bit about Israel's independence from 1948. But this was at the time Tel Aviv's art museum. And it's the spot where Israel's independence was declared. And we visited Rabin Square That was, for me, an emotional high point. It always is when I'm in Israel to stop there. So, yeah, we said a few words about the experience, and we sang there, didn't we sing Shir LaShalom, which was the song, one of the last things that Yitzhak Rabin heard in his life before he was assassinated by a right-wing Israeli. Very moving singing that there. That was Judith saying that from the kahal here. And then we went to, we're finally on the next day, the second day of touring. So all of that was one day, right? And on the next day, we went to Caesarea, which is a Roman ruin, a town that was built by Herod, a port. So 2,000 years ago, named after Caesar. You know, there's some inscriptions there that, you know, helped Herod curry favor with Rome. But so we saw a couple of things there.
Yeah, so you say Caesarea, I call it Caesarea, but I don't know what is it Caesarea? Because it's after Caesar?
Caesarea is
Hebrew.
Hebrew.
Got it. Okay. Well, one of the things that stands out to me in this place, if you were this picture faces the water, but behind us was a big, like a palladium. There was a huge amphitheater, and then there was this long strip of sand and buildings surrounding it that was supposedly kind of like where they had all the competitions, very much like Rome when you see the Colosseum. I'm blanking on the term. Anyway, thank you. So
It's a group effort.
Ori actually explained to us that this is where Rabbi Akiva took his last stand. And it was fascinating for me because I have an uncle who talks about the Shema all the time and how important Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And Akiva was being literally bound and tied at the stake, getting ready to die because he didn't want to declaim his faith. And we had a long discussion about why someone who was the leader of his faith would denounce it and die if he was the one who was leading everybody. And that had profound influence on my thinking about how we see the Shema. And every time I say Shema now, I think about that because, you know, the idea and his message was really, it's okay to stand up for yourself and even obviously for his heroism, but it was a really cool moment. And we stood at the waterside and Rabbi, Cantor Jade sang a song for us too, which was really amazing too. And that was the start of.
And here it is.
Oh, okay, good entrance.
Got it working.
You're wearing must be chilly. Wearing jackets.
windy day. It was a very windy day. So nevertheless, it was Israel in February. Notice the shorts and sandals. And then our next stop was an artist's colony, Ein Hod, where we got to meet a couple of artists and walk around the neighborhood and see sculptures and see the studio of someone in particular. I'm not sure this photo is actually in Ein Hod. No, does anyone remember where this is?
I think it was. It was at,
Yeah. I'm not sure. All I know is that in our WhatsApp group that said inspired by the artists at Ein Hod. So and just here's a bus stop in Ein Hod, right? Made by an artist mimicking the first street light in Tel Aviv, actually, which we had seen the day before on the Independence Trail. And then we were on our way north to our next stop, and we stopped at this place, Sindiana. Anyone have a word they want to say about Sindiana? Judith?
This was one of the highlights for me. This is an organization that was, I think, started by an Arab woman, but the whole point of it is working together. Arabs, Jews, and they're working to promote local farming, local vendors, and help them succeed in selling their wares. And also they're working a lot towards education about how we can work together and making sure everyone has equal opportunity to education, to economic prosperity. And first of all, you know, this wonderful woman just talked to us about their mission that was so moving. And then we got to make our own za'atar. That's what you're looking at here. They gave us a recipe. They gave us all the ingredients. They gave us little jars, and we made our own za'atar. So that was just a really fun little hands-on activity. And then, you know, some of us bought as much honey and olive oil and then za'atar as we could stuff in our suitcases to bring home as gifts. This was, I don't know, I was very, very moved by the mission of this organization. And I look forward to supporting them more in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Judith. And I actually was on their website yesterday, and there are several places in America where you can order their olive oil and za'atar from. I just got some for my nephew and new niece who are getting married next week, and our wedding gift to them is some cookbooks that they wanted and some olive oil that they don't know that they need. So
This was probably one of the most moving places for me also, and the women were just incredible. And I thought it was very interesting that they referred to themselves as Israeli Arabs, the Arab women there, Israeli Arabs.
and
They were-
Palestinians, right?
They were Israeli citizens
Yeah.
that were Arab. And I think that some of the revenue also goes to their families.
Yeah.
I think this is also fundraising for their own families. And now, you know, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Well, now we know how to make our own za'atar for the rest of our lives. But it was very moving. We also had a olive oil tasting, which was quite interesting. You know, not all olive oils are tasting the same and created equal. So that was kind of an interesting experience also. But the women were just amazing there.
And the olive oil tasting is what you're looking at right here. And Sarah, you were one of our volunteers who came up to taste different olive oil. And you can see the woman who is sort of guiding us through and telling us about Sindiana as well, standing kind of, you can see her, right? The one,
In the white pants.
yeah, in the white pants. Thank you. Let's try to figure out how to point her out. Anyway, So a really great spot on our way north. And then we stayed the next couple of nights at a kibbutz that has a guest house in the north of Israel, Kibbutz Hagoshrim. And the next morning we went out and took a ride on Jeeps in the Golan Heights. And so if anyone has a memory they'd like to share from there. On the left, you can see one of the Jeeps that we were riding around in. On the right, you can see a Jeep that's been there since the 6-Day War. At the top of the hills there, we could see the snow-covered Mount Hermon in still a bit in the distance from us, but the high point in the Golan Heights that you can look and see Syria from actually from where we were, but certainly from the Hermon. So,
Can you also see Lebanon from there?
yes,
Can you see how close the adjacent countries were? Like just across a field, and just across a mountain.
yes, and we had a surprise visit here to a chocolate shop. So we just, we ate our way through the land of Israel. In fact, yeah, because it was pretty chilly out there on the Golan in the Jeeps, So we were, when we were down in Caesarea, we were on the beach in shorts, and then we were up in the Golan and it was snow, right? So we stopped in a Druze village and had what some people say is the best falafel in all of Israel. The Druze are a community that lives in Israel and some in Lebanon, some in Syria. So the primary location of the Druze community in the world. But they are, neither, they're not Muslims, they're not Christians. Druze is a religion of its own. It's not very well known, and they're pretty insular in some ways, but they serve very loyally in Israel. They volunteer for the armed forces. A lot of career officers in Israeli military are actually Druze. Like I said, if anyone has comments, jump up. So I don't skip anything. But we have some photos here from. We now went to the Hula Valley, and so we were coming down out of the Golan. We went to Hula Lake, and which is, I'm told by people who really know about bird watching that Israel is one of the great places in the world for bird watching because it's that land bridge between Africa, Asia, and Europe. And so all kinds of migratory birds come through there. And we saw a great variety and a great number of these birds as we toured around. Some of us by bike, some of us on foot, some of us in golf carts. So we all got around in our different ways to see some of the same things for a little while. And you can see how lovely the day was there, and just a beautiful natural setting. It's, sometime I wanted to take people on a trip to Israel that's all natural. It's just the natural wonders of Israel, because they're amazing and they're so close together. I mean, for us in America to get from one of these places to another, I mean, I think that's something, George, you mentioned in your email with these pictures that you sent me, is that all these different climates so close together. It's kind of, in America, we have to drive 1,000 miles to get to mountains, it's a couple of hours in Israel. So extraordinary natural beauty there. And we went to Sfat that day as well. And so the place of the mystics in Israel that goes back, the town itself goes back much farther than this, I think, but it's really best known for what happens after 1492 when the Jews are expelled from Spain. And a lot of Jews who had this mystical ideas about Kabbalah and things like that, they come to Sfat. Right? And so so it becomes kind of a hotbed of Jewish spirituality and mysticism and things like that. We got to walk through its streets. We met one of the artists who lives there, who's become a friend of mine over the years, David Friedman. And we visited the synagogue. There are several historic synagogues, but this one is where the song Lecha Dodi was actually first written, first spoken, first sung. You can see a couple of shots of the interior of the synagogue, including the ark, which is on the right. And if you can tell in the picture, I hope that the top bends forward. In part, that's because they designed the ark and they didn't measure the roof. So when they got it in, they realized they had to bend the top part of it forward so that it would fit into the space. But so that's the image on the right from Sarah. And we had some free time in Sfat to wander around. But let me see. See if I can. I only had a few seconds of that one. I wasn't quick enough with my phone. So we had a little free time for people to shop and walk around, buy art and so forth in Sfat. So Sailan and Cantor Jay and I decided I think it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. We decided to taste whiskey instead. So there's a whiskey distillery now in Sfat. So yeah, so good thing we have slides to tell us what we did the rest of the day. Yeah. Yes.
I think this picture is a perfect encapsulation of what we noticed on the whole trip. And this was our first time traveling with the synagogue. And we just felt so fortunate to have the privilege of being with 3 different clergy. So it was not only Rabbi Ike and Cantor Jay, but also the rabbi from the Lisa Bellows from the other Beth Am synagogue who joined us. And we just loved the opportunity to see these people interact with each other. And even if you never go to Israel, I just want to share that I think we're so fortunate that we have clergy who actually like each other and get along with each other. And you'll see, because we stayed up north at the Hagoshrim, and I remember Jen and Cantor and Rabbi all sharing stories that they had to write the contribution for that month's newsletter. And they were all commiserating about that they had to write it, but it was just very cool to see them. Yeah. Yeah, but just being with them and feeling the energy when they're not being watched by a whole synagogue congregation of people was really special.
Yeah, actually writing that article, I recall, as being kind of fun because Cantor Jay and I never get to write an article together. So there was this opportunity to sort of bounce ideas back and forth and things that it was fun. And of course we did it sitting, near someone who's playing the piano, and it was quite nice, really.
They got it in on time because they promised.
Yes.
They would get it in on time, and they did.
Right. But it was like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. where we were, and still the work day here. So we did work kind of right up to the deadline, actually. So I think that's what I've got for Sfat. We were now on our way to Jerusalem, and on the way we stopped at the brand new blood bank of Magen David Adom. And this has not been on our trips all the time, but first of all, because the blood bank is brand new, but also because we had this opportunity this year to actually raise funds to be part of an ambulance drive here. And both congregations, Beth Am and ours, were involved in that, along with several others. The actual ambulance that we provide for the state of Israel is going to visit here before it's shipped to Israel. So that's in October. So on a Sunday morning in October, I think the 22nd, our ambulance with the name of our congregation on it will actually be here. So we can see it. The ambulances, strangely enough, are made in Terre Haute, Indiana, and then shipped to Israel. So, so we got to visit the blood bank.
I just wanted to say one word about this one, like Michael was talking about when we were at Leckett, how relevant that was to the work that he does. I just retired, but I work for Abbott Laboratories and I work for their diagnostics division and I support their transfusion division. And it was so meaningful for me to go to this blood bank that is just, they didn't have the Abbott instruments in there yet, but they'd been ordered and they were waiting for them to arrive. And it just was one of those moments where you just feel all the connections, global connections about the difference that all of us make in the work we do in all different ways, how we impact each other. And it just was very meaningful for me personally to be able to be at this facility.
Thank you. And again, the Vida Dome, and just in case someone in the room or online doesn't know, is essentially Israel's part of the International Red Cross. They do work in Israel and internationally. They were one of the first groups into Ukraine, one of the first groups into Turkey after the earthquake recently. And they are the blood service for all of Israel. Michelle, did I? Oh, sorry. So.
Thank you. I think one of the things that is most powerful about the visit to Magen David Dome is it's emblematic of the kind of progress that Israel has made as a country and how it contributes to the world. This is such a modern and advanced facility. We know we toured their laboratories. We got a good understanding of their security systems because it services the entire country, as well as some outside neighboring countries. And the work of the laboratories isn't just a matter of collection of blood samples, but it's analysis and it's storage for up to 10 years, we learned. And they deal with unusual blood types as well as your more common A, B and O's. And it's just a phenomenal advanced facility. And when you think of Israel as a country that came out of nowhere, really something out of nothing, a small country that is half desert, and for them to be so advanced in the areas of science and medicine and making a world contribution, it was very, very stimulating.
Thanks. So what did we do next? We went to Jerusalem, right? So the next day we did a tour of the old city. And so this is us actually on the rooftops of the old city, which is an interesting part of the tour. You go up some steps and you're actually up on the roof. So for those of you who may not have been there, we're above the shuk, above the Arab market there.
Keep going.
Oh,
Like
I
I'm
thought
not
you wanted
here.
to say something.
I don't. I want to fix this.
So, yeah, okay. So we have here, as I said, we were above, we could hear sounds, we could smell smells, and we can see as you look behind Cantor Jay's head, you can see the golden dome of the Dome of the Rock on top of the Temple Mount. So just a beautiful overview of the old city. And then we walked around in the old city, and we have a couple of images here, the one on the left and the one in the center from inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is an extraordinarily crowded while we were there too. It was a very busy day. Were we already in the month of Lent when we got there? I'm not sure. Not yet. No, I guess not yet, but so it was very crowded. I'm not sure, more so than I've seen it some other times of year. So, but it was, there's a lot of beautiful imagery there. I mean, that's, I believe, a Greek Orthodox monk doing some writing there in a scribal room on his own. So. And then the next day we went to Masada, and I see Michelle, are you coming up? Yeah, okay. So you can see it from a distance. And again, that's sort of coming from the different terrain all over Israel.
So one of the things, kind of going back to Jerusalem, when we were in the Holy City, you see tour groups and visitors from all different kinds of religions, which that was something that really struck me in Israel. We kind of, we think of it as being the Jewish state, but there were Christians and Muslims, and we are shoulder to shoulder with them. So one of my favorite stories that I've been sharing about Masada is we get there and most of us, except Mike Gordon, took the cable car up to the top. Mike walked it. But we get squished into this cable car with a tour group of Christians from South Carolina, North Carolina, whatever. And so at the beginning of today's program, Rabbi Ike says, when we got to Tel Aviv, I might mess this up, but this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice, right? So the cable car starts going up Masada, and we're shoulder to shoulder with this Christian group. And all of a sudden they burst into song, and they're singing that psalm. And we all look at Rabbi Ike like, oh my gosh. And
They're
just
singing
kind
your
of,
song.
and just kind of the interconnections. That was something that I felt, which was obviously Israel has lots of problems because it is the melting pot of multiple religions. So that's a positive and obviously a challenge as well. But that's one of my favorite stories from this whole trip was that moment.
Thank you, Michelle. I think I've got a couple of other pictures from Masada as well. So just some of the, so I think probably everyone knows what Masada is, right? So, it was built as a palace by King Herod. I don't know that we have any evidence that Herod was actually ever there, but he built it in case he needed it. And it ends up being the last stronghold of the Jewish zealots in the Roman rebellion, the one that ended in the 70s of the Common Era that resulted in the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. So, and there we are on top of Masada. And so we had a little time to relax at the Dead Sea as well. Some people took the opportunity to sleep. Others took the opportunity to float. So, we spent some time there as well, enjoying both the water and the mud of the Dead Sea. I, by the way, have many years of pictures of members of the community in bathing suits covered with mud. It's just sort of funny. I look back through my old file photos in my phone and I say, yeah, it's I actually have one of our members lying on his back in reading the newspaper, floating in the Dead Sea, right? So, and that's the sea from a distance. And that night we were back in Jerusalem and we had Havdalah. It's actually right across the street from our hotel. And just walked out there and sang. So, and the next day, some solemn moments. We spent some time at Yad Vashem. This is one of the sculptures outside of the museum. It's a meaningful moment for sure. And that same day, we also visited Mount Herzl, which is Israel's military cemetery, something like Arlington for us. Also the place where many of Israel's prime ministers over the years have been buried. And so we have, does someone want to say something about this picture? Michelle, you sent it to me, but I wasn't on this part of the walk because I took a group that the non-walkers went one way and the walkers went another way. So I was with the other side of the group. Mary's coming up too, so.
Well, for me, it was really meaningful. I have a family who has always served in the military. My grandfather was a general during World War II in the Engineer Corps, and my uncle served, and my other uncle served, and my father served. So to see, and I spent, my parents live in DC, so, Arlington was a cemetery that I've been to many times. What I loved about it, except for the prime minister's graves, they are all the same. You could be a new recruit, 18 years old, and you get the same respect and grave as someone who's a general who served 25 years. And they had a law that you couldn't, every grave had to look the same. Now they're allowing people to individualize it in the sense of they can plant the flowers they want, but it's still the same grave. And the fact of that sense of community where everyone is to be respected, no matter what your service to the country is, really is moving. And is something I don't think we always see in our society. I think it's very hierarchical, and it's not when you walk into that cemetery. I thought that was remarkable.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, when the group that was walking up, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but there were groups of young women soldiers that were coming back from, I guess, the Shabbat weekend or something. Oh yeah, you weren't with us. And they were just, kind of like college kids. They all had their suitcases, their rolling suitcases, and they were walking up the hill to wherever it is that they stay. And so that was just kind of interesting, and especially in Jerusalem, we just saw groups of young soldiers, and they've got, the machine guns just slung on their shoulders like a purse. I mean, just so casually, and they're getting lunch and doing their thing. And just kind of thinking of like our 18-year-olds and kind of what they're up to, compared to these young people. And then also, I don't know if you have pictures, but when you get to the top of Mount Herzl, there's more esteemed grave sites of like Golda Meir and some of the other leaders from the state of Israel, and that was very impactful as well.
I think I took one of those.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
So are these above ground graves?
No, so people are buried in the earth, but there's a small, brickwork above them. And then, of course, what you're seeing here is the people who visit graves leave a stone behind. In this case, not a little pebble. You can see that people have brought some pretty large stones there. So, our group met back up where some of the prime ministers are buried. So this is the grave of Golda Meir. So you can see, while it's different than the others, and each of the prime ministers' graves are a little bit different, they're still not grand in a certain sense, right? They're still pretty simple and pretty basic. But I always like this one because it also includes the name she had before she left Milwaukee, Meyerson, right? So she changed her name to Meir when she came to Israel. And this is also where Theodor Herzl's remains are buried. This is called Mount Herzl, named for the man who's considered to be the father of political Zionism. His body was disinterred from Europe and reburied here on Mount Herzl after the birth of the state. He died, of course, before the state was actually born. Although he did in 1897, he said within 50 years, there'll be a state, a land of Israel. And so from 1897 to 1948, 51 years. So off by
off by a matter of months, right? You know, but an amazing prediction. So, that evening, we went back into the old city of Jerusalem and we went through the Western Wall tunnel, which was only excavated, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe something like that, maybe a little longer. So we were on top at one point of the rooftops of the old city of Jerusalem. We also walked under the old city of Jerusalem. What you're looking at here, the light at the top, that's the minaret at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount. You can see the golden dome of the Dome of the Rock as well. And what you're looking at here is the Western Wall, right? So the part of the wall that's considered to be the Orthodox worship space of the Western Wall is kind of to the left of our picture, past where that scaffolding is there. And but the rest of the Western Wall has been archaeologically excavated so that you can actually now the rest of the lower part of the Western Wall, the Southern Wall, are visible. So these are the walls of the retaining platform that held the second temple up on top. So these walls come from the time of Herod 2,000 years ago. And the tunnel shows you how far the Western Wall extends. I guess that would be to the north as you're walking underneath, and you can see some of the most immense stones, the largest stones that are in the Western Wall are in that tunnel. So it's not a great place for folks with claustrophobia, but it's an amazing thing to walk through and see. And you get to the far end of it, and there's this moment where there's a little bit of something unfinished. And the suggestion we think is that that's the moment. It kind of preserves the moment of the destruction of Jerusalem, right? That the workmen were working on something and the end of the rebellion against Rome happened and they didn't get to finish the job, right? Because that's when the temple was destroyed. So it's a kind of a remarkable thing to be under there and to see that. And the next day we took our bus around and went to different sites and different places around Jerusalem. So you can see in the right, the soccer stadium and the basketball arena from the town of Gilo. And on the left, you can see an overlook, which again, shows us the old city from a distance. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but it's a rather peculiar thing about, there's a lot of passive heat, so hot water heaters. Well, are you coming up? That's okay. I'll come back to it.
I want to talk just a minute about Jerusalem. I became ill and couldn't be with the group. And so I got this gift of walking around Jerusalem for 2 days all by myself. And it was really a gift. And I had this sense that every place in Israel, actually every place in Israel, I was standing on sacred ground. And particularly in Jerusalem, and being able to kind of touch stones and know that thousands of years ago, people touched those stones. It was so profound. And I talked to people. I got lost. I just had a beautiful time wandering. And I want to say one thing about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There was a place in there where I believe Jesus was laid down. And our guide said that his blood, this is a little weird, his blood dripped down to the center of the earth and touched the skull of Adam. And that was, where am I? And this is just the center of the earth. Wow. Anyway, I loved wandering around Jerusalem and seeing things that I probably never would have seen otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I was going to say it's interesting enough for whatever reason. On the rooftops, you may be able to see some water tanks. Israel does a lot with solar heat, solar panels, and all those kinds of things. But it's just sort of an odd thing that on houses of Israeli Jews, those tanks are white, and the Palestinian supplier, they're black. So you can actually distinguish that in the photos. This one's not so clear, I'm afraid, but I have some others where you can see sort of neighborhoods where all the water heaters are white up to a point and then they turn black. Right, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. But so we're looking here at a mixed neighborhood because you can see some white tanks and some black ones. That all has to do with who you called to install your heating system, right? So it's not a deliberate thing. It's just who's doing business where in what neighborhood. So it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. So couple of other shots just around Jerusalem, not necessarily from the same moment, but some of us walked up Ben Yehuda Street one night and ran into one of the protests in favor of Israeli democracy. So this one is near the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. And then I think we have at this spot where there was an overlook of the old city, there was actually just a piano sitting there, a grand piano out in nature, just there. So. Just an impromptu moment there. We're coming to the end of our trip. This is an image from our final dinner together in Jerusalem as a group. Again, you can see our tour guide, Uri, who I'm pleased to say we've already arranged that Uri is going to lead our next trip, which is not in Israel, but in Europe next year in April of 2024. So, and he's done that before as well. So that was our trip to Israel. I just want to show you a couple of images from some folks who went on for an extension in Jordan, in Petra. And I don't know if one of you wants to come up and talk about that experience. Cather J was on it. I went immediately to a rabbinic conference that was meeting in Israel at the time. So, and I've got a couple of pictures here from Petra, I believe. So that's Wadi Rum, right?
Yes. Wadi Rum is an amazing experience because it is so desolate. It is the Lawrence of Arabia desert. And it is palpably quiet and serene and expansive and meditative. And a couple of our sojourners wrote reflective pieces about the experience at Wadi Rum. So I'm not going to say more about that particular thing, other than it was very moving and unlike anything that I've ever seen, certainly in the United States or elsewhere. When we went on to Petra, I can say this. A few years ago, we had the privilege of going to Machu Picchu, Harry and I, and we discovered that as much as you can review pictures and videos ahead of time and get a sense of what an area is like, until you're standing there looking up at these grand edifices, you don't get the full power, the full impact of what these places, and there are very few in the world, have to offer. But that was the experience of Petra. We had reviewed pictures and so forth before we went. But when we got there and we're staring up at these grandiose buildings and contemplate how they were put together in ancient civilizations without the benefit of the technology and the equipment that we are used to today. It is really inspiring, if not just puzzling. How in the world did these people do that? So it was a breathtaking experience.
Thank you. And so you can see a little bit of the architecture in Petra on the left. So this is usually referred to as the treasury, though it's not a treasury, but it's from the Nabatean culture. So it's about 2,000 years ago as well. And it's carved out of the red stone, right? It's not built there and then knit in the rock. It's carved out of the rock. And that's one of the amazing things about Petra. We see a little bit of Nabatean architecture like that around Jerusalem as well from that same time period, but nothing as beautiful or as colorful as what you see in Petra itself. On the right, that's where you guys stayed, right? That's the glamping experience, the tents with electrical outlets and real bathrooms and things like that in the Wadi Rum. So, and I think I may have just a couple more from Petra, because I really love the smiling camel. So to show you that may be it. Yeah.
I'm going to take us back to Wadi Rum for a second. I'm one of the people that wrote a reflection. Judy's the other one. I was, like Rick said, very moved by the expanse and the openness of it. So I just wanted to share with you what I wrote. And this was written, you saw that glamping thing, right? So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I went out and I laid down on the boardwalk in front of my glamping tent. And I looked up and the stars were amazing because there's no light pollution there. And this is what I came up with. Home for Wadi Rum. Open, B'kol Levavcha, into the heart-opening expanse of the Jordanian desert with Moses etched into the cliffs and mountain faces dripping like ice cream and red sand cool and soft under bare feet. Open B'kol Navshecha, with all your soul, into the soul-warming tea, sweet with sage and cardamom and cinnamon, healing gut and heart and lungs, breathing in the fresh air of the gentle desert breeze. Open B'kol Me'odecha, with all that you have, into the vast awe of the night sky, darkness screaming silently with stars, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper, and others yet to learn, cool and warm in a borrowed coat of Bedouin hospitality.
Lovely. That's beautiful. Any last thoughts from our group before we finish? So till we meet again. So, we say next year in Jerusalem, but in this case, it's the year after. So, so in 2024, we plan Warsaw, Krakow, and Prague, or he will be guiding us, and hopefully an add-on to Budapest for those who would like to go on and see that as well. Yes, we do. It's before Passover. Right. So we do. We're finalizing itinerary and stuff like that, but it's around April 12th. Yeah. Might be. Yeah, it's Sunday the 7th. Right. So that's the start. So we'll be starting in Warsaw there. Probably people would fly one way to Warsaw and one way back from either Prague or Budapest. So, and then the next year, I'm hoping to do it early in June before it gets too hot, but late enough in June that maybe some families will be able to join us. Maybe we'll get to have a bar mitzvah on our trip as well in 2025. So thank you all for coming. Thanks especially to those who went on the trip for being here with us to reshare the experience. Thank you to everybody who sent me pictures. I used most of them, but a few, we had a few redundancies, so, but I really appreciate everybody sharing. It was great to be with you there. It's great to be with you here, and till we meet again.